Welcome to the PTR Physiotherapy Rehab Podcast. My name is Warwick Schmidt, and in this podcast, we interview subject matter experts, authors, and elite athletes to help inform clinicians and patients and generate discussions around sports, rehab, health, and how to get people back to their best. We hope you can take away some content and use it in your practice. Welcome to the PTR Physiotherapy Rehab Podcast, where we talk about all things sports and rehab. We have a great episode lined up with the England Lacrosse S&C and physio team. Before we get into the meat of the episode, I'd like to ask both to introduce yourselves. So if we start with Adam and then Josh, and how you got into lacrosse and how you found your way into the England team.
Perfect. So my name's Adam Arthur. I'm a Band 7 physiotherapist working in musculoskeletal outpatients in Essex. So I have a mixed role between adults and children caseload with soft tissue and joint injections on the side of that as well, with a little element of managerial and line manager kind of skills with it as well. Currently undertaking my master's from the University of Essex in advanced musculoskeletal assessment and practice. And I also work for England Lacrosse. I've been involved for the last kind of 3 or 4 seasons now. Quite fortuitous to be taken on by the main physio, Sophia Busfield, as well. So that's fantastic to be getting involved, having played a little bit of men's lacrosse at university as well. So yeah, snuck into the sporting side, less of the playing side now. So I don't have to be as fit previously, kind of do as I say, not as I do kind of thing. Right now, as most physios tend to end up. So yes, now on the medical side of things instead.
Excellent. Josh?
Yeah, my name's Josh Wall. My day job is Director of Performance at a girls' independent school. And then lacrosse side of things, a bit like Adam, started playing at university and then got into international lacrosse during my masters and started out with Wales men's lacrosse. Went to the European Championships with them and then a World Championships in 2018. Then went over to Italy women's lacrosse and did the World Championships with them in 22. And then, yeah, I've done the past 2 seasons with England women's lacrosse, and Adam and I did the European Championships, which we won last summer in 2024.
Very nice. And we'll explore how you both work together in a moment. I just want to ask you both, having both played it, whether you could just run through the basic sport, kind of the numbers on each team, and how does the sport work for somebody who's never heard of lacrosse?
Yes, I suppose there's a fair difference between the men's and the women's side of things. So for us on the women's side of things, matches are 4 lots of 15, so the American quarter style match. You've got 1 goalkeeper and then 3 defenders, 3 midfielders, 3 attackers. So 10 on a pitch at a time. Rolling subs across that, so you can, a bit like ice hockey, you're a lot of time working within strings of first line, second line, third line, subbing in and out, and then it's a really fast paced game, lots of sprinting. There's a sort of a draw in the middle, which I suppose is your kick off, which is the ball's in the air held between their sticks, and they sort of have a little bit of a 1v1 flick up and try and win the ball back, and then it's play on from there really. And then I'd sort of equate it to looking a bit like with ice hockey, how you can play around the goal. So you'd be a sort of a 6-on-6 situation around the goal. So it's very multi-directional through the midfield. When the ball's transitioning, it's quite north-south, a lot like your other sports, football, rugby. But then around that goal scenario or defending, then it's very multi-directional, a bit like a clock face. You're swiveling. There's lots of cutting passes, cuts off ball. So it's very multi-directional game in that sense.
The contact is actually quite happens quite a lot in the sport, isn't it? Although technically it isn't. But do you get a fair bit of that as well?
It's a bit of a dark on the women's side. It's a more of the dark arts of it. It's contact, but not overly. It's not as much as the men's, like where it's a bit of a free for all can be. So they can still check check the top of the other person's stick to dislodge the ball, and then make contact to put pressure on them, but not like push them over, can't blast them out of the way type of thing. But it's definitely still a contact sport to a point, and the rules are slightly changing a little bit more. They're trying to streamline things a little bit, so there's not such a difference between the men's and women. So yeah, they'll still have, especially if they're right-handed, their left arm is normally covered in bruises by the end of a tournament from the contact.
Nice. If we go to the typical sort of pre-season, we sort of start with pre-season, mid-season / tournament, and then how you finish off. How do you, working together, if you were to run us through how you would prep for a tournament, if that's all right? So if there's any screening tools or any injury prevention stuff that you work together with that listeners might not be aware of, that would be really interesting.
Yeah, I suppose like from a context of what the sport looks like as an entity within this country, and lots in the rest of Europe, really, anywhere outside the States where they've got the collegiate setup. So for us, it's a camp-based model. So we meet once a month, pretty much, and train for the whole weekend. And that is our sort of our training model. And then the S&C report support is remote through Team Builder. And then that's how we program and get the content. So it's slightly different in terms of there's not as much in-person coaching doing the S&C work, but then it all comes back around to delivering on camp and squeezing in that balance of on camp. Obviously the head coach, they're there to play lacrosse, and we've got to find the gaps and work through what we need to achieve, as well as for the S&C program, for the physio, and balance, get the needs of the players across the year. So and then in terms of, we'll have camps every month, and then we'll build up into there's a home international tournament, just sort of like the lacrosse Six Nations, in the sense of playing England, Scotland, Wales, plus normally another like a Germany or a Czechia, and then there's the major tournaments on the usual cycle. So every 4 years there's European Championships, every 4 years there's a World Championship, so that runs then in like every 2 years you've got a major tournament to look forward to, and then in a year like this year we've got a World Championships next summer. We'll also do a US tour, so in October we're going on a US tour to go play, because the Americans and the US are the best. So we'll go play some of the college teams out there, do quite an intensive 10-day tour, and go try and play 5 or 6 games against the US colleges in their full season, essentially. So that's sort of like the overview of how the sport works and how we have to manage what we do to interact with that. So then we're just in an off-season period now. We're really wary of, there's been like quite a consistent tournament we had Europeans last year. There was also an under-20 World Cup that last summer as well. We're rolling into a World Cup season. It's worth noting that lacrosse is now in the Olympics for LA 2028.
That's exciting.
So, really exciting for the sport. And they've, a bit like rugby sevens is for rugby union, they've created a shortened format game called sixes. So that's what is going to be in the Olympics. So now there's a GB entity to that. So that's separate to us, linked with us, but it's another demand on those players, because again they're a camp model. So for example, next year I think there's 18 camps in total across the season. So it's a big demand and big consideration for our planning, especially. So we're going into an off season now, which will be about 3 weeks, and then we'll build out into pre-season before going on to the US tour in October. So for now, at the moment, it's about giving them a chance to have that break, because we think it's that training monotony, the mental recovery that they've really pushed themselves, and knowing what will be coming up in terms of the usual stresses of sport, of trying to be selected. The selection point's going to happen in January, so they're going to push really, really hard. across that US tour all the way through to Christmas, and then it gets, once that squad's selected, that intensity is going to ramp up again towards a World Cup. So yeah, very much trying to get the off season, give them a chance to have a break, and then pre-season, one of the main things would be reintegrating their strength. We generally always run sort of, to keep it simple for the players as well, we run mainly 3 types of session. We do our gym strength work, our speed and agility sessions, and then our conditioning fitness work. The players quite like that as just a simple 3 part of how we can easily program, especially remotely for those. But a big consideration this year is just going to be building up that chronic running volume, because the difference between a singular event of a game versus a tournament, which is generally going to be 7 to 8 games in about 10 days or so.
That's a lot of sport, isn't it? They fit quite a lot in. Adam, how do you work with Josh or the team? How do you fit in terms of the prevention side? Do you come up with your own programs, or do you use templates that have already been processed from the previous physios, or how's that work?
I think it's a mixture of a couple of things. So at the moment, the girls or the ladies they're all employed full time. They still have normal careers and full time lives outside of lacrosse, and this is very much kind of a hobby on steroids for them. They're not necessarily paid to play. Some of them get sponsorship, which they've sourced and worked out themselves, and sometimes things get a little bit subsidized through fundraising, but they're paying to play effectively through most
a lot of
the
work,
season.
isn't it?
Yeah, it's very much I guess it's kind of a semi-professional sport that's transitioning with the introduction of the Olympics coming up in 2028. So there's a lot of demands to fit around a few things, and like I said, with the camp model is probably the biggest thing. So probably is more of a view to prevention and trying to stop people breaking down rather than pure injury management as it goes. Obviously, it's the nature of sport, a mixture between contact injuries at camp and then muscle injuries, and then a mixture between ligament strains and sprains, a couple of ACLs we've had over the last couple of years, and also then concussions as well. So I think usually when we break it down for a weekend, because again, we're not exactly paid full time for this either, so we drop in and out with the demands of the sport. So usually a lot of it is remote, and the girls will go off all across the country, as far from Exeter to Durham across the UK in terms of playing, and even potentially a few coming over for camps from America as well. So it'll be very much kind of numbers always open if you need to text or call and drop in to catch up, and then we'll do your typical kind of subjective work over the phone and video, same with some objective testing if need be, and then ask for some data back in their gym programs. Usually with the gym program, we'll be able to have comments and notes on it, and then we can discuss it as a team and integrate it as we need to as well. If it's a few kind of more niggly kind of injuries and kind of complaints that we're picking up early, then we might look at the programming and whether we need to change a little bit in the gym sequencing, potentially adjusting load going into weekends, whether people are carrying knocks from previous camps with GB in England, or previous matches, because a lot will still be, some will be at university as well, so they'll potentially be playing a university game on a Wednesday and then rocking up to an England training weekend from Saturday to Sunday, including travel up Saturday and travel back on Sunday, depending on how far they are. So a lot is at a distance. Sometimes they'll have their own facilities, or they'll have their own physios that they'll go to and trust, both in the private world or even through university and scholarships as well, potentially. So it is very much communication's key, and then having that conversation between player and athlete, because at the end of the day, a lot of the time they want to know 4 main things: what's wrong with me, how long will it take to kind of get better, what can I do for them, and what can they do for themselves. And then it's that conversation over the group to utilize everyone's skill set. Typically in terms of the MDT structure or the medical structure, I'll manage most acute injuries and diagnosis kind of thing, and then fade out into Josh's larger brains for some of the return to sport things, and just getting an athlete fit and robust again to tolerate the demands of lacrosse.
It does seem like there's a lot of communication that is quite key, isn't it? So I guess it's so easy if you're in a medical team every day in the same gym, it just becomes easy where you guys have to really juggle things.
It's a lot of WhatsApp groups.
Yeah, No, I bet. So you keep yourselves really busy. If you were to potentially run through the tournament, and again, congratulations on the Euros. That was a great result. If you were to run us through what that was like, so kind of how it felt setting up and how you both work. Because I know, Adam, your voice note on the group when we were chatting, setting up this episode was really good. So if you followed that what you were going to chat about, that sounds really interesting from where I'm sitting.
Yeah, I think if we break down into a few areas then. So like I said, we're a camp-based kind of structure before going into anything, usually once a month. That might then increase coming closer to games time. But at the end of the day, we also train and play in England, so the weather can be very different. So if you look at where the tournaments are over the last couple of years, the Europeans, which is probably the easiest to discuss today, having both been through the structure of it over last year. But even if that was in Portugal, again, dealing with different temperatures. And then this year, it's going over to 2026 into Japan for the World Cup or the World Championships. And then currently the GB squad are currently off to China. So things can vary in terms of location, environment, jet lag, everything from that element as well. So I think maybe if Josh, you break down kind of maybe heat acclimatization and what we kind of done around that, building into a camp from April and kind of May, depending on the weather in the UK, having gone through largely a winter UK sport, and then how you kind of deal with going into somewhere that could be 30 degrees while you're playing games. And then we can break down kind of the tournament structure in terms of the games and how it varies compared to other sports and what demands that has on the squad and the size of it as well.
I think that's great insight. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think Adam's hit the nail on the head. Like, tournaments can be in various places. I've been to Hungary, been to the States, and next year we're in Tokyo in end of July into August, and looking at the heat demands and humidity. But last year it was in Portugal again, midsummer. But I think from our mindset of, especially with the potential detrimental impacts of heat, we very much planned with a worst case scenario in mind. So we put the heat acclimatization. Again, it's difficult to do from a distance, to do remotely, versus what you would do probably in person. But it was very much go back to the old school, do the conditioning, the bike sessions, fully track suited up, stick a beanie on, with lots of guidance around not completely cooking yourself, but making sure that we had at least across those 2 weeks, aim for at least 10 exposures, heat acclimatization exposures. Lots of it was just fairly steady aerobic sessions, and then just got that in before we got there. And we got there, and it wasn't too bad. And Adam was taking the mick that I'd done all this training for nothing, but it did heat up in the end. But it was better. Yeah, sod's law, isn't it? But it was very much. We'll be honest.
I bet you planned it. I bet you planned it out, just like all the details, and then it just didn't.
Yeah, it couldn't have been any better. Arriving to 18 degrees and rain, and everything
right at home.
Slightly changed.
Just sidestep.
It did get to 30 odd degrees eventually. So
that's the benefit of sport.
It's kind of work, isn't it?
You can plan as much as you want, but unfortunately, sport changes at its own will. So it's been adaptable around it. I think if we look at it from kind of a team structure, it's a little bit crazy when you describe it to someone. If you think traditionally, depending on your sport, if you look at football with kind of the World Cup and the Lionesses recently coming back, or potentially the men's doing a World Cup or Euros, and it'll be held over 30 plus days, and they'll arrive a week or two before to acclimatise to wherever they are, playing games 2, maybe 3 times a week. You've clearly got that 48, 72 hours potentially to recover in between. Whereas when we look into kind of a lacrosse tournament, like I said, it could be kind of 7, 8, 9 games all within kind of a very short window. and that is then how do you best kind of recover, keep fit, both in terms of tracking potentially minutes across a squad, who needs a bit more exposure to things, who's had a lot of exposure, how are people feeling, all whilst being on a very, very small budget as well, which makes it a little bit challenging. It's not like there's 4 people up in the stands with loads of GPS data and we can see who's hit their kind of their top end max speeds and everything from there. So it is a little bit cookie cutter approach to different things as we go. But the biggest demands are having so many games so quickly, and the time to kind of bounce in between, all whilst producing a good level of quality lacrosse at a very high intensity for the international stage as well.
With the,
we did quite a lot of controlling what you can control within that. So yeah, we knew what the schedule was, the timings of those games. So then we put quite a detailed structure together of when different things are going to happen. So every morning we do a bit of a weigh in to check hydration status, and then a bit of a check-in as well, a wellness check-in, a bit of a chat for everybody within the team. So things that we can do just to keep an eye on a wider squad, and then a chance to catch up. Or if I'm feeling a little bit of niggle, have you got time to put some treatment in or give me a bit of stretching? And then post that, we do an en masse mobility stretching session as well every morning. And then depending on when the game was, then we'd have time to go chill out. Players can relax, or we're gonna, if it was a day off, there was one day off. I think we did, or it was 2 days off. One day we did a training session. Other times we've been making use of the pool. There was a sort of great local pool set up in Portugal, in Braga. So we'd make use of the bit of pool recovery. And then really tightly control around the games, lots around nutrition and fueling, and the recovery aspects, hydration within the heat. And then as soon as we're finishing, we're getting stuck into our recovery shakes, ice baths, and then going from managing the schedule as well as we can to ensure that we're recovering as well as possible. And that was a bit of a motto of ours, was to be the best recovered team, because we're going all the way, and that's the aim, to reach that final in best condition that you can.
And did you get good buy-in from the players? I assume they've risked a lot and worked so hard to get there. You didn't have to fight anyone for that. They were all kind of keen to do everything you suggested and get stuck in.
Yeah, absolutely. That, I think they've put so much in to get there. Lots of people. Some people it was their first major tournament. Some people had done 3 or 4. But really, we've got a really good squad of girls, and they really bought into what we were asking of them, and wanting to make the most of it. And they just really value that support. I think that's when you're used to like trying to find help and scrapping for every little bit, and it all the cost comes down to them for whatever they do. They want to make the most of it. So they're really good with anything that you want to try. You reason it out, but you don't have to fight anyone to implement things, really.
Nice. You mentioned obviously time and sort of financial restraint. Did you have any recovery equipment like compression gear, or did you on the trip, or did girls bring them along?
No. So we'd had a deal with Nutrition X for our like recovery, like protein and carbohydrate recovery mix, and then the themselves hosted the ice baths at the stadium. So but even then you had to pay for the ice type thing. So it's very much like nothing's for free in those senses. So it was around our big rocks of what we can do to implement. Everyone's got a foam roller, everyone's got a band, we can stretch, we can do all those things, get the nutrition right. And then the ice baths were the main thing that we did post match. And then it was all down to sort of their personal, what do they need to get right. And I think that's part of, like with a remote program, them understanding themselves to know, right, I know I need to think about my glutes or my hamstrings. I know I'm going to get tight as I go through the tournament, so I'm going to keep an eye on that and manage that. It's those sorts of that self-awareness that you've worked on through the camps to be like, you've got to take ownership of this as well.
Absolutely.
I think that driving that accountability is quite a key measure there. I mean, on trip, in terms of, I guess, from a medical point of view, there for Portugal, there was me and Josh looking after a squad of 24 players. So it's a large number for only a couple of pairs of hands, effectively. So it's very much you need to be self-monitoring yourself and working out kind of what your needs are, and if you need help with problem solving that and working out where to go, then let us know and let's have those conversations. But then also, if there's certain things that need to work through, then let's put in a bit more of an individualized plan for it as well. So an element of team generic kind of recovery, sleep, nutrition, ice baths, that kind of was set as a culture, and that kind of builds coming even weekends and camps going into the tournament, so it's not a surprise coming up. People know what they're kind of getting involved in, using tours like October coming up to the States to kind of almost have a really tight congested schedule to have almost like a run through of what it will be like next year as well, in a world championships. And then the players along with the coach, and there's kind of that self-policing culture that kind of brings everyone through as well. And then, like you said, you can kind of have that eye at a distance to see how people are moving just by seeing how you know them through working for them for the last year or a couple of years. You know when to have a conversation with someone, or the players will know that themselves when they need to reach out for a bit of a chat as well. And then you've got the wellbeing scores that we can monitor and track little trends over the course of the week as well, and see how people are doing. And then you can have, if need be, those conversations with coaches as well, so we know as a team how we're shaping up going into the next game, and does that potentially influence minutes, positions, tactics, and all that kind of thing building into it as well. So we have to bounce between players and coach and stuff, so sometimes you're between a rock and a hard place,
sure,
in working out where to go with some of those as well, all whilst kind of keeping a lot of
what we did.
I was going to bring,
what we did quite well in terms of between Adam and I, and the relationships built with the players, of how we positioned ourselves, of we're there to support everyone, we're there to enable the best performances on the pitch, but some of that is the player, we're in close with the players, and we want to be open door policy with them. If they can come and whatever they need, whatever they want to chat about, they can, and there's not everything that we were going to pass on to coaches, but then there might be something that we need to, there's an issue that we might feed upwards, and probably the other way back down as well. The coaches will be asking certain questions, and like Adam says, you're between things in that regard, but you just sort of, we got very good at navigating things in the best interests of everyone, with clear lines of what's what really.
Nice. I was going to bring up the just for a brief second there, the internet ran out just for a split second, so it went blank on the screen for the last 2 minutes that you've chatted there. Do you mind repeating what you've done, or what you just said? Sorry.
Me or Adam?
I'm just trying to rinse you for as much as I can. Yeah, that's never happened before, so apologies.
No, we've run seamlessly from my end. Maybe it has recorded, but we can go for a few bits. What was the last bit you caught?
It was the wellness scores. I think it was wellness scores / trying to bringing up the coaching chat, which I was going to ask about how you guys broach that. So I was going to ask about your wellness scores. Do you have a name or a type of wellness score that you guys have been using?
Nice. There must be the Joshua wellness score.
There we go. You heard it here first. Joshua wellness score. Anybody uses that? There you go.
It's your very standard, like out of 5, sleep. How well do you sleep? Waking up. Put me on the spot. I can't remember all the 5. It's essentially 6 questions, and then the main thing was just tracking through. Having the spreadsheet on the other side to just be able to easily filter through the names, to just look at that. Are there any trends across? And we'll have tracked that from as soon as we arrive, not just the match days, so that we've got a bit of a standard before that's coming into place. And you get a little bit of noise around the travel, so there's always a little bit of an acclimatization around the travel, and then it sort of settles down. and then we get into the tournament match day, but being able to sort of make it as longitudinal as you can across 10 days of what's normal. And then it just makes life, rather than just sitting down with a player and being like, just very blunt, it gives us a little bit of a clue before we have that conversation of, oh, your sleep was a little bit down, like, and it just gives us a little doorway open into having those conversations. And then once that ball's rolling, normally if there is anything to chat further or investigate or have a deeper conversation about, then we can.
Do you track? Sorry.
There's always an element of simplicity with these, isn't there? I think if it's easy and quick to fill out and it becomes a little bit of a regular thing, one, we can build it into habit, so it's a bit easier to complete. Secondly, if it's simple and easy to fill out as well, it gives us enough information to prompt us to have some questions if we need to and explore things in a bit more detail. But it's simple enough to do, so there's not much kind of, I guess, kick back into doing it. There's no big time to complete it for the athlete point of view. And then there's not a lot of necessarily as bigger amount of analysis from our stage as well. So it makes things quite easier. I think if we were an endless budget and endless time, we could have force plates out to look at stuff as well in a lot more detail and see if people are tailoring off physically. But a very simple 1 to 5 on how you're sleeping, what's your mood like, how irritable are you, how stiff are you feeling, what's your general fatigue feeling like. It's a nice way of covering a few basics to then work out if we need to have different conversations and to prompt the athlete to kind of reflect on how they're feeling as well. And then we can see if there's any strategies needed in place there for individuals.
No, it's really thorough. It's very useful information. Do you track sleep out of interest? I mean, I'm being really nosy now. Do you track sleep, like hours per night, or do you just leave it to how they're feeling?
In the tournament, we put a simple like how long, but again, it's the athlete knowing what their normal is as well. So it's a lot of the work is done in that build up to go what is normal for them. And again, with the constraints, so everyone's sharing a room, right? So like I'd share a room with Adam, and all the players. Yeah, I know. But all the players are the same, and you might have one player that snores, and it's just those life on tour constraints of different sleeping environments, and again, it's encouraging the players to bring their own pillow from home so that they've got something that's regular. But yeah, where you end up in these places, it's life of sport, isn't it? But just trying to make things as regular and as consistent as possible within that, and their own understanding of things as well.
Absolutely. If we then track forward to the start of the tournament, you've done all the prep work, you've checked wellness and everything, and invariably there will be injuries. I assume, did you encounter any of them during the last tour, the Euros?
I think there's one case that probably always stands out a little bit more. You expect your little niggles, irritations, a couple of like muscle contusions, and it's the athletes use a metal stick effectively at the end of the day, so you're going to have bruises, a couple of dead arms, dead legs, slips, trips and falls and everything else that comes with a contact sport. Keepers wear helmets, gloves and a little chest guard with a neck guard, and sometimes that is it. And they're still stopping a rather large kind of rubber sized ball flying at them at God knows what speed. So there's always little parts like that. I think luckily we avoided any big muscle injuries. We didn't have any kind of big time loss injuries in terms of hamstring strains and anything like that, which is probably more credit to the programming going into training and kind of reaching that kind of chronically high exposure to sprinting, and that's always been in kind of the programs as well, a speed exposure during the weeks. So we didn't have anything like that. Luckily, we didn't have any horrible injuries or anything like that, which is fantastic. We didn't have any concussions either, which would have taken someone out of the tournament. I think one case that always stands out for me for a point of view, and it shows you the sporting environment, is we did have a kind of a lateral ankle sprain quite early on into the tournament as well. We'd just settled, landed, everything was going well, won the first 2 games fairly comfortably. People were getting minutes and it was rotating around nicely between the squad. Because we were still new and fresh and just landed, getting used to kind of the temperatures and training and playing at different times of day and different pitch markings, we went for a training session to do. And as always, the level of ability is high because it's an international sport, and the intensity is high to drive quality. And unfortunately, we had a player just changing direction, just literally laterally shuffling, shadowing a defender, and unfortunately went over on her ankle and had a lateral ankle sprain. It's one of those where you think it's going to happen in the match play because that's what you're there for, and then unfortunately it then happens in training when you're kind of least expecting it. So a mixture between you kind of roll your eyes thinking brilliant, it's in training of all the times to happen, but it just shows you kind of can't let your guard down no matter where you are. It's always an element of risk, and there's always an element of competitive high level sport as well. So that was always challenging, because then you've got the question of, we're here with two elements to it, which is a bit different. One, the injury itself. So you've got to make sure that everything's safe from that point of view. So your on-field assessment, working out, is it okay to kind of continue and work through with rehab as you go through your week? Is it tournament ending? Is it even an emergency case where you think, okay, you might have actually fractured something or done something a little bit more seriously here, and we're now in a foreign country where we need to activate kind of a medical plan from there and get kind of assistance sooner rather than later, and it can't wait till it comes home necessarily. And then you've got the nature of, is it tournament ending as well? So you've got the player to look after, you've got the coaches wondering, can they play? Will that be it for the tournament? Do I need to start looking at tweaking tactically and everything from there as well? So happy to break down that one a little bit more in terms of how we managed it.
That would be that'd be great, just for listeners. And I think that the key for me, one area of interest is how a discharge criteria. What is it? What do people use as a way of going, right, you're actually resilient enough to get back on the pitch? So
absolutely. So first of all, the athlete mindset is, this will be fine, I'll be able to play further through. In the Euros, we were fairly highly seeded, so expected to make it through to the later stages of the tournament, to the finals. So it's instantly like, it's okay if I don't miss the group game here and there, but I'll make it for the knockouts, right? And it's like, well, that's probably like 5 days away. That's not necessarily that quick.
That's a short turnaround.
It could be a very, very short turnaround, all considering. In terms of mechanism injury, just to put it into kind of listeners' kind of heads from there. So we were kind of laterally kind of shuffling, just going from left to right, and we went over on the right ankle. So very much an inversion injury. One of those, when you're working kind of pitch side, normally during the game, you have a good view of it. It's sometimes recorded and you can play it all back later on and fully work out a mechanism of injury. Was it kind of a high impact, a low impact? Was it jumping from a height and landing? Was it changing direction with sprinting? Was there any weight bearing dorsiflexion or kind of eversion or any kind of rotational activity that you might think there's slightly higher ankle sprain going on as well? But with this one, as always, you're doing something else, working with someone else. You might not necessarily always see it. So acutely, from a pitch point of view, you're relying on how the athlete feels, what levels of pain are they in, obviously, is the first kind of thing. Sometimes it's getting everyone else away that you don't need around the situation at the time. Getting the coaches and staff to take players away for elsewhere, and they can either continue doing something else, or while you assess the kind of situation, or if you do need further help, then like I said, the game stops around you while you're going. In this case, luckily, the Ottawa kind of ankle rules were all negative, so there was no kind of tenderness around the medial lateral malleolus. We're able to weight bear immediately, which is always a relief with a kind of an acute injury like that. Base of fifth was also fine, since we had that inversion injury and kind of rolled that way. And it depends on the mechanism and what you've seen and what you get reported, what they say as well. Was there any popping, clicking, clunking that they kind of felt with it as well, and what's their immediate kind of reaction to it? Often gives you a good sign. So that was the kind of the acute management, removed from kind of field of play, and then you go back to your accommodation and typical kind of compression, ice elevation, your normal kind of principles to help optimally kind of protect that joint as well. I think when you're in a tournament with such a short period of time, one, diagnosis has kind of got to be on point for what I've kind of said earlier. You need to work out, is this an injury that needs something dealing with urgently? Do you need to attend to your local kind of emergency department? Do we need x-rays and imaging and things like that? Do you need to protect weight bearing, depending on the injury and how that impacts the tournament? But like I said, with these ankle sprains, sometimes it takes a couple of days for you to fully understand the full picture of it. So I think a combination of some of those Ottawa kind of ankle rules being fine and safe is good. So it's always nice and reassurance from that point of view. And then you just start your normal acute management to start with as well. Try and avoid some anti-inflammatories early on as well, certainly in that kind of first 24 hours or so, just to let what information you need. It's a mixture between, you need some information for the healing, but sometimes the negative of this situation with such a small time frame is then too much swelling is then a bit of an obstacle to providing you more impairments going forwards as well. So that kind of does the initial stuff. Post the training that day, you can then dive into the evening and then get another proper look at things when kind of the adrenaline settled down and the injury settled down a little bit, and you can see kind of what you're dealing with as well. Again, your normal kind of physiotherapy assessment, really looking observationally, swelling, colour, bruising, anything kind of coming up, ability to weight bear still, kind of your palpation of your bony kind of landmarks, talar dome, sometimes your metatarsals, depends on if you want to rule out kind of your lig frank elements as well, and then looking at gently, I think when it's so acutely, but some of your palpation around those ligamentous structures as well. Most of the time, 78% of the time, it's probably your ATFL that you largely do with a lateral ankle sprain, but sometimes you need to check that CFL or make sure there's not a higher ankle sprain as well going on as well.
Sure, those higher ankle sprains really do put a spanner in the works, don't they?
And they're the tricky ones because they don't always blow up with your swelling necessarily. We actually had a higher ankle sprain when I was out in Canada with the squad for sixes as well a couple of years ago. And they are those deceptive ones where they don't necessarily always blow up as much, but your management could vary quite quickly as well in how you look after them. And then obviously you've then sometimes got concerns over what you do with flying and a few things from there as well. Lastly, you want to be the other side of the world and potentially need ankle surgery or something as well. So it can be difficult, and then how you get those access to healthcare. So just different things to always think about in sport, but reaching out to tournament organisers is always a good start when you're going off and having those medical debriefs at the start of the tournament to work out what your state of play is as well.
Right.
I think the benefit of this one is, luckily, over the last couple of days, icing, elevating, and kind of calming things down, we were able to kind of slightly train around it, still work on some kinetic chain stuff without irritating the ankle, and pain and swelling actually settled down fairly well to a stage, like you said, where we were able to actually get back to potentially being available for selection by the end of the tournament. So a real kind of rapid turnaround. The big challenges here is then the communication between the player, understanding what the risks are between, in an ideal time frame, if it was in any other kind of clinic, whether it's yourself working in the MAD or if it's another kind of sporting clinic, you're probably not encouraging an ankle sprain necessarily going back to sport within 10 days kind of thing, because it is quite early. Risk of further injury, potentially more the time loss associated with that, potentially more soft tissue or ligament injury, chondral injury, all those kind of elements to it. But at the end of the day, it's a once in a 4-year opportunity that someone might not necessarily be back for. There's an element of self-funding, which is a pressure as well. And it's potentially a final of a world championship. So this is where your traditional physio brain has to think, well, we are in a fairly elite sporting environment here. So the conversations do change, pressures. Certainly if they're one of the more top athletes in the squad, of how do they fit in around the coaching setup as well, what's the coach's expectations, what's the player's expectations, and what's the player prepared to tolerate as a potential risk. And again, because the job for us is to provide the athlete with as much information as possible for them to make the best informed decision that they can. They're entitled to make an unwise one, and then that's a case where you can say, look, this is the risks. That conversation as a team again, where the athlete's up to, as long as they understand. Then the coaching point of view, you might be necessarily, even if it's fully healed potentially, you might be physio fit, but it doesn't mean you're match fit for the coach at the level that they want. So there's also that pressure as well. Doesn't just mean, from my point of view, you can go and play. If the coach then says, no, you're not ready, or you're not at the level that we need, that's where it then changes. I think for this case, it's what facilities have you got? Again, luckily we had a muscle stim, we had access to ice, so we could work on a few things early doors there, some potential soft tissue or hands-on kind of elements. We had access to the pool, like I said, so we could get in early and do some gentle kind of work in the pool, some kind of hydrotherapy almost, for want of a better word, to get some rehab going early and just start to get the joint moving and see how things go. In terms of the discharge criteria, like you said as well, it's what have you got, and it's the basics again, hop, land and jump kind of things.
Got about 15 minutes left. If we finish what we want to talk about, and then we'll call it a day. Just hopefully the Wi-Fi gets sorted. So you, Adam, you were there before we cut off. You're talking about how you got the buy-in and potentially giving athletes more choice if it's a big tournament. And that was that if they're injured, obviously we don't want them to all run on newly injured anything. But if it's a big tournament like Euros, did that athlete, was that insistent from day one, or did you have to kind of, you didn't need them to buy in much because it sounds like the ankle went really well anyway. Is that right?
Yeah, buy-in's not necessarily in this setting hard to achieve at all. I feel like I spend a life trying to get people to buy in and understand why they're doing it in normal day-to-day physio life. But in this aspect, that's the easy part. Sometimes it's holding people back. That's the harder element, and stopping them doing as much. That can be sometimes more of a challenge than not. And that's the same for any squad weekend we do as well. It's you can kind of give enough rope, but sometimes there's a limit. And you have to physically kind of be that devil on the shoulder that says, no, time to rein it in a little bit, just for your own benefit as well. That's never a problem in this case. The biggest problem here was, like I said, is having the conversation of this might be tournament ending, potentially, but we won't know for another couple of days, potentially, depending on how things deal within that next kind of 24, 48 hours. And it's the conversation with the player over that, and then the coach as well.
Did you, Adam, sorry, I just wanted to ask, in terms of the objective tick box stuff that you did, or not tick box, but assessment, how did you assess each day that they were getting better and strong? Was it single left calf raises? Was it limb symmetry index? Was it manual muscle testing? Is that how you got to that picture?
Yeah, combo. How does it look? How grumpy does it look ultimately? And then kind of breaking it down, kind of pain within the last 24 hours. What are your kind of ankle impairments? So you're looking at your range, potentially weight bearing range and dorsiflexion as well. We had a handheld dynamometer, so you can look at some strength in rough ranges, inversion, eversion as well, compare it towards left and right. I guess you kind of get a limb symmetry between the two. A big thing I think with ankles as well is kind of that hopping as well. For are we potentially going to get you back to running and back into sport? Yeah, just single hop, triple hop, maybe a crossover, some similar to your ACL kind of test really, but can be applied to kind of anything lower limb based, even like a 40 centimeter kind of like lateral hop, just to test the ankle over a longer period, like 30 seconds. Look at distance, landing, how comfortable they feel with it, what are my feelings with it, and you can slow mo it on your phone and break it down a little bit more to see the landing mechanics of it a little bit more. And then also what are the athletes' perceptions of it? They'll have a gut feeling themselves where they'll know, this feels pretty good, or no, this just isn't right. And sometimes the more you test, they can't hide it after a while, and they have that realization themselves. That's always easier if they know themselves internally, rather than having to kind of be that bad cop and break that news as well. And that's kind of the biggest thing. And then you can luckily get back into return sport. I think it was actually during the quarterfinals where we actually, instead of kind of doing the generic team warm up, was able to run through almost some return to play stuff and just see what confidence was like. Accel, decel, change direction, some reactional work with change direction and kind of shadowing and change direction quickly. Even just shadowing me on the pitch as well. Certainly not an elite level athlete, but if you can
back in your BU heydays,
if you can survive my lack of athleticism, changing direction, then and the unpredictability of that, it'll probably do all right.
Very high standards.
Yeah, and then like I said, it's then after a while, if you're happy with where things are up to and the athlete's happy with where you're up to, it's that conversation with the coach and say, look, it's down to you. You see. If they're good enough to make your squad selection for this case.
Yeah. With that one there, was it predominantly physio led, as in leading them right up to the kind of fitness, or did you jump in and help with do you have any assessments that you wanted to do with them? Fitness?
I think like Adam says, it was all very logical, simple to difficult, and layering in the complexity as we went. It responded really well. She was really lucky with how it was, because we were on feet. There was a lot of walking, toing and fromming, getting about the place, and she did really well with getting back into on feet, and I think just that walking early, actually, it might have helped with it as well. And then we made a lot of use of the pool. Luckily, there was a shallow end of the pool that was about waist height, and we just used a lot of, again, just go from 2-footed plyometrics into 1-footed plyometrics into A skips and those sorts of things within the pool, and just going, how does that feel? How's the responsiveness off the floor within those? And that was all good. And then we got to that point where she'd come out early before the match. Adam had gone through some of those on pitch parts, and then it was like, oh, actually let's chuck her into the team warm up with me. Can she get through some of that, and maybe do 3/4 of that before we go into sort of the more opposed change direction top end sprint work? But could she do most of the warm up? And she could. And then it was a case of, right, full warm up, and then try and see if we can, depending on she was fortunate in the semi-final that we were at a position where we felt there was it was the game where the game was. We felt we could get her into the game without a ton of pressure on her, but by getting her into the semi, that would afford her some confidence mentally to feel like she could go into a final match in 2 days' time ready to perform in a final. So there's a real balance of all of those things, of the physical plus the psychological, and it helped that she was a trainee doctor as well, so that's a level of
kind of discharge yourself, I think. Yeah.
If you're happy with it, then but no, she was really good, and it all went as well as it could have. It definitely could have gone another way, but like Adam says, you're having that fine line of sort of that end of tournament, trying to get the player back to facilitate. She was an important player for the team, and having the ability and the communications and relationships with the coach, the player, us, to just be able to leave the door open. There wasn't a pressure from anyone to say, I need to know now. And I think that was one of the best parts of it, was everyone was happy to say, we'll do everything and we'll see, and we'll get there and cross the bridges when we need to, versus having to be under a ton of pressure and make a decision at some point. So it was a really good case in the end.
Nice.
I think that's the caveat to it, isn't it? Is that even if you get back to that level and you think, yes, as an athlete, I'm getting there, I'm back in playing, it's then that caveat of, we've also got to see how you tolerate the next 24 hours after as well, and how do you react to it as well, and does your body tolerate the demands that we're asking it to do this early? And if you've got a squad of 24 and you're kind of the only physio, you need a great colleague like Josh to do some of that rehab work as well. And I think sometimes physios, we can be a little bit kind of up on our high horse between, I look after this bit and this is my role and things from there. But if you've got 24 players, you can't just focus on one for the entirety of the time, because you've got 23 other members of the squad that still need work and potentially a different priority because they're match fit and ready to go potentially. Sometimes that creates more work or less work, depends on which way you look at it as well. But you need to have a clear idea of each other's kind of competence and what you can kind of delegate off and divvy up. Otherwise you're going to struggle to look after that squad and either burn out yourself or just not be able to give the quality across that many people as well.
Lots of comms. How did how did you broach it with the coach? Was an easy conversation? Was the coach relaxed about it? Were they stressed?
He wasn't pushy, but he wasn't relaxed about it. He's very straight to the point. He's from the US, he's American, so there's like that slightly different cultural aspects of their expectations and how things are done in the States. So he was very much open to, and the messaging was, if you get back to and you feel like you're in a position to, based off what the guys are saying and where you feel you are, and you're able to compete, and that was a key part of being able to compete, not just put yourself on a pitch. And that team side of things, it's not taking that selflessness with it as well. So it was really, really positive overall. But you could definitely get into situations where there's a lot of pressure on. If it was your superstar, then that maybe changes something, doesn't it? But yes, it's not that she wasn't important, but it was a good conversational round, and continual conversations and updating throughout everything. We'd have team weekly, well, with Adam and I sharing a room, made that super easy, but then we'd have with the coaches meeting at least once a day as well, so there was constant updates throughout that process. And then post that semi-final, there was a day off before the final, so that gave us another little window to go do some on feet, give her a bit of on pitch time, and be ready for that final essentially.
Nice. No, it sounds like it worked out really well. We've got about sort of 4 minutes left, so I think I wanted to ask, what was it like at the Euros? You guys, obviously the girls did incredibly well. Was it a good environment? The final, like, were you guys on the edge, screaming as loud as they were, or when the final whistle went, or
you join the roller coaster. You join the roller coaster with it. It's absolutely exhausting when you arrive. You're the first up. You're setting things up, sending out questionnaires, checking on everyone. You're probably the last to go to bed once you've done the scheduling, the planning, and everything else. It's long hours. You go through the highs and lows of even match day. It's not like you then go sit in the stand and switch off. You've then got your own job roles, Josh looking at minutes and player data throughout the game and collecting that. And I'm then switching my head to a medical point of view and pitch side trauma point of view. And then afterwards, you're then straight off into ice baths and recovery and heat and everything else. You're never a down moment with it necessarily. Luckily, we found a few moments to enforce on ourselves, and sometimes even just say to each other that just need 5 minutes, go grab some fresh air, have a walk, clear your head, and just take 5 minutes for yourself at the end of the day, so you can give as good as you've got. Yeah, absolutely. And then you go through the tense moments of the games where they're really close, and you're on that sword edge of kind of winning or losing, and then the elation of winning it at the final, and you think, you know what, that's why I do it for. It's those moments which you can't replace, and being a part of that squad, that journey, and being a small part of it is what makes it as well. And you share those highs and lows, which is what makes sport the best thing going.
No,
I think we'd made that sort of commitment to each other to say that, like, we're all in, like we're going to do everything that we can do to facilitate the best we can for this tournament. And there's a little bit of self-sacrifice with that, but it's like finding those bits of spaces for yourself. We managed to squeeze a couple of games of paddle in here and there, just to mentally take a break, go to the gym, just anything to break the routine, so you can get very much into a washing machine of, like Adam says, you're up before everyone else, you're getting stuff ready you're trying to make the players' lives as streamlined as possible in some senses, because that tournament tax of day to day gets very, very quick and can get quite repetitive. But you're constantly working through everything as much as possible, but trying to look after each other and ourselves so that you can give your best self. But you're definitely knackered at the end of it, but it's all worth it in the end.
Definitely, like a bit of a pressure cooker. Nice. Well, look, guys, I that was a lot of information. I think the goal of the podcast was just a bit of insight into what you guys get up to, because it sounds like a lot busier than I thought it would be. You thought there are so many more games than they're playing as well. So, you're working really hard. I think definitely keep an eye on the Olympics now that that's also an option, and see where that goes. It sounds really interesting. So you said the next tournament's in October, is that right?
It's going on US tour in October, then World Championships in Tokyo summer 2026.
Awesome. Well, good luck to you guys for that. We have 60 seconds left. So thanks for taking your time out, guys. This has been the PTR Rehab podcast, and hopefully you guys stay well and it goes well next year. Thanks for coming
very much.
Awesome. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, guys.